particular cult that you know of through news accounts and the like that you found interesting?
Well, I'm wondering about the connection with high tech. I think what's going through a lot of people's minds is why such intelligent people would get involved with this seeming Mickey Mouse-like character. And I'm wondering about the idea of the computer. You know, Simon and Garfunkel wrote about the sounds of silence. This is the first generation that we have experimented with removing people from each other. In previous generations, when people wanted to talk, they'd go out to the stoop and they'd talk, they'd socialize. But in this particular time in which we live, the computer is moving us away from each other. We used to talk and now we type. So millions of people today will get on their computer and they will start communicating, and they will be talking to everybody, but they'll be really talking to nobody. What does this do, I'm wondering, Ed, to the human psyche when we take away that X factor, that spiritual camaraderie between two people, and we separate them and we isolate them, and they talk to each other through email? Is there a need for these people to relate to each other in such a way on a human level that they'll be drawn to a guy who says, look, you're in the computer world, you're lonely because of the nature of your business, so maybe the best thing for you to do is come into me and I'll feed you and give you all of this human interpersonal relationship, and you can still pursue your vocation, which unfortunately separates you from the rest of the people.
Don't we find, though, through many members who join cults, the idea that many of them are not adept at socializing, and perhaps that's why we see some of these people who may have been hooked into the computer for their form of socializing? Right.
Which came first, the chicken or the egg? What happens in these cases? And that's a very interesting point you make. What is going on here? I think that what's happening is that the loneliness in our society is drawing people more to this. People also, there were some songs in the 60s and 70s. Peggy Lee talked about, "Is That All There Is?" And Simon and Garfunkel talked about the sounds of silence. And all of these types of songs and reflected the loneliness in our society. The Beatles talked about all the lonely people. So all of these factors of separating people, and also, when you add to this concept of people who are maybe not that social, they need somebody to feed them that X factor, that spiritual factor.
Do you find in today's times that you see an increase in those preying on people, trying to indoctrinate them into cults?
Well, I do, but I think that's because the opportunities exist more. When I counsel people, they talk about this loneliness, and you have always had throughout society people who try to take advantage of other people, but what is going on here is we've never had in the history of man a situation where we could communicate without being one-on-one on a personal, physical relationship. This is the first time that we've had that, and we really don't know what's going to happen. If this is indicative of the future, unfortunately, there may be some copycat situations here.
What of those who sit on the peripheral, those on the outside? A lot of people say, well, how could people not be able to raise a red flag when they saw all of these people in the homes? How often do we see people actually intercede in situations like this one?
Walk down the street of New York, Ed, and what do you see? You'll see people crying in the street and people just not noticing and walking by. And this is happening more and more as people move to the cities. Not noticing tragedy and tragic situations is becoming more and more a part of our society.
Anything that families can do? We heard that most of the family members here really felt that there was nothing they could do because they had very little contact, had no idea where these people were.
Well, obviously today, in this generation, kids can fly all over the world now, and with tickets and things like this. What you should notice in any family member, not only a child, is the whole idea of a change in personality. Where are these people going? Are they being withdrawn? Yeah. Do you see any major changes in their lifestyle and their way they relate?
And basically just pay attention.
Yes.
All right. Rabbi, thank you very much for coming in and joining us. Appreciate it. All right, when we return, we're going to...
You decide.